trying to protect the photograph and notebook inside. That night, Lily was waiting for him at the small kitchen table in their apartment. She had drawn a picture of the two of them standing beside a giant house with a yellow sun overhead. "You're home early," she said, smiling. Daniel forced a smile back. "Yeah, sweetheart. The machines decided to behave today." She ran to him and hugged his waist. He held her tightly, closing his eyes so she would not see the tears forming. Later, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table. Bills were spread in front of him like enemies. Rent. Medicine. Electricity. Hospital payment. His last paycheck would barely cover 2 weeks. He opened his notebook and looked at the sketches he had made over the years. Most people saw old machines as scrap. Daniel saw possibility. He knew which motors still had life, which frames could be rebuilt, which factories threw away equipment because buying new looked better on a balance sheet. For years, Hale Manufacturing had dumped old machinery behind its storage yard. Victor had called it junk. Daniel stared at one sketch for a long time. It was a plan for rebuilding outdated industrial molding machines using salvaged parts and modern control systems. He had shown it to Victor once. Victor had waved it away and said, "Nobody makes money from garbage." Daniel whispered to the empty kitchen, "Maybe nobody tried hard enough." The next morning, Daniel took Lily to school and then walked 3 miles to an industrial auction yard on the edge of town. It was a place where failed businesses sent broken machines, rusted equipment, and forgotten dreams. Men with money came there looking for cheap bargains. Most ignored the piles of damaged parts stacked near the back fence. Daniel did not ignore them. He moved slowly through the yard, touching metal frames, checking motors, opening panels. He found 3 old molding units, 2 conveyor systems, and several control boxes from a closed packaging plant. Most buyers laughed when they saw him studying them. "That stuff is dead," one man said. Daniel looked at the machines and saw something else. He saw a beginning. The auctioneer started the bidding low. Nobody wanted the equipment. It was too old, too ugly, too heavy to move. Daniel raised his hand. 500. The auctioneer blinked. $500 for the entire lot. Daniel nodded. No one bid against him. By noon, Daniel owned what nobody wanted. The problem was, he had no place to put it. He spent the next 2 days calling everyone he knew. Most did not answer. Some offered sympathy but no help. Finally, old Mike from Hale Manufacturing showed up at Daniel's apartment after dark. "I heard what happened," Mike said. Daniel looked down. "I am sorry you got dragged into it." Mike shook his head. "I should have spoken up. You would have lost your job too." Mike handed him a folded paper. It was an address. "My cousin owns an old garage outside town. Roof leaks. No heat. Nobody has used it in years. He said you can rent it cheap." "How cheap?" "First month free if you clean it." Daniel looked at him, stunned. Mike shrugged. "You always fixed everyone else's junk. Maybe now it is time you fix your own future." The garage was worse than Daniel expected. The windows were cracked. The floor was stained black with oil. Weeds grew through the concrete near the entrance. When it rained, water dripped from 6 different places. But when Daniel stepped inside, he smiled. It was not much. But it was his. For the next several weeks, Daniel lived on almost nothing. He dropped Lily at school, worked in the garage until pickup time, made dinner, helped with homework, tucked her into bed, then returned to the garage after midnight while Mike watched Lily from the apartment couch. He cleaned parts by hand. Rewired panels. Sold scrap metal to buy tools. Watched free engineering videos on an old phone with a cracked screen. He failed again and again. One night, a rebuilt motor exploded and filled the garage with smoke. Another time, a conveyor belt tore in half and nearly crushed his foot. There were days when Daniel stared at the machines and wondered if Victor had been right. Maybe he was finished. Maybe he had risked everything for rust and broken parts. Then Lily came to the garage one Saturday with a lunchbox in her hands. She saw her father sitting on the floor, head down, grease on his face. "Daddy," she said softly, "are you losing?" Daniel looked at her. He wanted to lie. But Lily had already lived through enough pain to recognize fake smiles. "I don't know," he said. She sat beside him and opened the lunchbox. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich cut unevenly in half. "When I cannot read a big word," she said, "you tell me to try one letter at a time." Daniel's eyes filled. She handed him half the sandwich. "So maybe you fix it one piece at a time." That sentence changed something in him. One piece at a time. Daniel stopped trying to rebuild everything at once. He broke the problem down. He focused on one machine. Then one function. Then one part. 3 weeks later, the first molding unit came alive. It shook violently. It coughed. It groaned like an animal waking from a long sleep. Then it ran. Daniel shouted so loudly Lily covered her ears and laughed. Mike hugged him. The first product Daniel made was simple, small plastic brackets used in warehouse shelving. Nothing glamorous. Nothing powerful. But they were needed by a local supplier that had been waiting months for overseas inventory. Daniel walked into the supplier's office wearing his only clean shirt and carrying a box of samples. The manager, a woman named Grace Rivera, inspected the pieces carefully. "Where is your factory?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "A garage." She looked up. "A garage?" "Yes, ma'am." "Employees?" "Me. Sometimes Mike." Grace studied him. She had seen desperate people before. But Daniel did not sound like a dreamer begging for a chance. He sounded like a man who had already done the impossible and simply needed someone to notice. "These are good," she said. Daniel held his breath. "I can give you a small order. 5,000 units. Daniel almost dropped the box. Grace pointed a finger at him. "But if you miss the deadline, I cannot help you again." Daniel nodded. "I will not miss it." He did not sleep more than 3 hours a night for the next 10 days. The garage became a battlefield. Machines ran hot. Parts jammed. Daniel's hands cracked and bled from constant work. Mike came after shifts to help pack boxes. Lily placed stickers on finished cartons and called herself the company president. When Daniel delivered the order, Grace checked the boxes, counted the units, and signed the invoice. "You did it," she said. Daniel looked at the paper in his hand. It was not a fortune. It would barely cover rent and materials. But it was proof. He was not finished. Word spread quietly. A supplier told another supplier. A warehouse owner needed custom clips. A small furniture company needed replacement parts. A farm equipment shop needed plastic housings no major manufacturer wanted to produce because the order was too small. Daniel said yes to everything. He named the company Carter Rebuild Works. The logo was drawn by Lily in purple marker. For 2 years, Daniel fought for every inch. There were no investors. No fancy office. No safety net. Just Daniel, Mike, Grace's occasional advice, and a growing group of workers who had been ignored by bigger companies. Men and women who had been laid off, rejected, underestimated, or told they were too old, too young, too slow, too ordinary. Daniel hired them because he knew what it felt like to be thrown away. He hired Carla, a former assembly worker who had been fired after missing work to care for her mother. She became the best line supervisor Daniel had ever seen. He hired Jamal, a mechanic who had a prison record from a mistake he made at 19. Other companies refused to look at him. Daniel gave him a wrench and a chance. Jamal rebuilt motors faster than anyone. He hired Mrs. Bennett, a retired school secretary who said she only knew paperwork. Within 6 months, she was running invoices, payroll, and customer calls like a general commanding an army. Every person who entered Carter Rebuild Works carried a story. Daniel made sure they understood one rule. This place does not throw people away. The garage expanded into a warehouse. The warehouse expanded into a small plant. The small plant became 3 buildings. Daniel bought more unwanted machines from auctions and failed factories. He rebuilt them better than before. He developed a system that allowed small companies to order custom parts quickly and affordably without relying on massive overseas suppliers. Then came the crisis that changed everything. A major storm hit the coast and shut down several shipping routes. Manufacturers across the country panicked. Big companies could not get parts. Plants slowed. Orders backed up. Customers screamed. Hale Manufacturing was one of the companies hit hardest. Victor Hale had spent years outsourcing critical components to cut costs. Now shipments were delayed for months. His plant floor was filled with unfinished products. Contracts were at risk. Investors were furious. One Monday morning, Victor sat in a conference room surrounded by executives who looked terrified. "We need a domestic supplier," he snapped. His operations manager cleared his throat. "There is one company turning orders around faster than anyone right now." "Then call them." The manager hesitated. Victor glared. "What?" "It is Carter Rebuild Works." The room went silent. Victor frowned. "Carter?" "Yes. Daniel Carter." For the first time in years, Victor had no clever reply. He remembered the single dad with the cardboard box. The man he had humiliated. The man he had called finished. Victor's pride resisted, but his company was bleeding money. So he made the call. Daniel was standing on the factory floor of his own plant when Mrs. Bennett approached with a strange expression. "There is a Victor Hale on line 2. Mike, who was nearby, froze. Daniel slowly wiped his hands with a rag. For a moment, the old humiliation returned. The glass office. The laughter. The security walk. The rain. Then Daniel looked around. He saw Carla guiding workers through a production run. He saw Jamal teaching a young apprentice how to test a motor. He saw Lily, now 12, doing homework in the office after school, still proud of the company logo she had drawn years ago. Daniel picked up the phone. "This is Daniel." Victor's voice came through, polished but tight. "Daniel. It has been a long time." "Yes, it has. I hear you have built quite an operation." Daniel said nothing. Victor cleared his throat. "We need parts. Urgently. I am prepared to offer a strong contract." Daniel looked through the office window at the machines running across his floor. Many of them had once been scrap. Many had come from auction yards where nobody else had raised a hand. "What parts?" Daniel asked. Victor explained. Daniel listened carefully, taking notes. The order was large. Very large. It could bring millions in revenue. It could also put pressure on Daniel's team. When Victor finished, he added, "I assume you are interested." Daniel leaned back. "I am interested in solving problems," he said. "But we need to discuss payment terms, delivery expectations, and worker safety requirements." Victor gave a small laugh. "Daniel, let us not make this complicated. I need parts, you make parts. I am offering you a chance." Daniel's voice became calm and firm. No, Victor. You are asking for one. Silence. Victor did not like that. But he needed Daniel. They negotiated for 40 minutes. Daniel demanded fair pricing, realistic deadlines, and contract protections for his workers. Victor resisted, then slowly gave in. Before ending the call, Victor said, "I must admit, I did not expect this from you." Daniel looked at Lily's old purple logo on the wall. "No," he said. "You never expected anything from me." The Hale contract pushed Carter Rebuild Works into national attention. Business magazines wrote about Daniel's unusual model: buying abandoned equipment, rebuilding it, hiring overlooked workers, and serving companies too small or too urgent for traditional suppliers. Investors came calling. Daniel refused most of them. He did not want people who only saw numbers. He wanted partners who understood the mission. Grace Rivera became his first official board advisor. Mike became head of maintenance operations. Carla became plant director. Jamal led technical training. And Daniel created something no one expected: the Second Chance program. It trained single parents, laid-off workers, veterans, former inmates, and older workers who had been pushed out of the job market. Trainees learned machine repair, quality control, production management, and logistics. Many earned more money than they had ever made before. At every graduation, Daniel gave the same speech. People are not junk. Machines can be rebuilt. Lives can be rebuilt too. But success did not erase pain. One winter evening, Daniel came home late and found Lily sitting at the kitchen table, now older, quieter, staring at an old photograph of her mother. Daniel's wife, Emily, had died when Lily was 3. A sudden illness. No warning. No time to prepare. After that, Daniel had become father, mother, provider, nurse, cook, and comforter all at once. "I barely remember her voice," Lily said. Daniel sat beside her. "She used to sing when she washed dishes," he said. "Badly." Lily smiled a little. "She would be proud of you," Daniel said. Lily looked at him. "I think she would be proud of you too." Daniel looked away. For years, he had been running so hard he had never fully grieved. Losing his job had not been the beginning of his struggle. It had only exposed the struggle he had already been carrying. "I was scared every day," he admitted. Lily reached across the table and took his hand. "But you kept going." Daniel nodded. "Because of you." The biggest turning point came 5 years after Daniel was fired. Hale Manufacturing was collapsing. Victor's leadership had driven the company into debt. He had ignored workers, delayed upgrades, chased short-term profit, and lost major contracts. The once powerful plant was now half empty. Rumors spread that it would be shut down and sold for parts. Then Carter Rebuild Works received a proposal. Hale Manufacturing's main plant was going up for sale. The same plant where Daniel had once been humiliated. The same floor where he had worked nights fixing broken machines. The same building where Victor Hale had told him he was finished. Daniel stood outside the plant gate on a cold morning, staring at the sign. Paint was peeling. Windows were dusty. The parking lot was cracked. Mike stood beside him. "Never thought we would see this day," Mike said. Daniel was quiet. Buying the plant would be risky. It was huge, expensive, and damaged by years of poor management. But it had space. It had history. And it had hundreds of workers who might lose everything if the plant closed. Daniel walked through the factory floor with the bank representative. Old employees recognized him. Some looked embarrassed. Some smiled. Some whispered, "That is Daniel Carter." He stopped near the maintenance station where he had once kept his tools. There was still a faint outline on the wall where his nameplate had been. Victor Hale was waiting in the executive office. He looked older now. His confidence had thinned. The expensive suit remained, but the power behind it was gone. "Daniel," Victor said. "Victor." For a few seconds, neither man spoke. Victor looked out at the factory floor. "You really built something," he said. Daniel nodded. "A lot of people built it." Victor swallowed. "I suppose you came to enjoy this." Daniel looked at him carefully. "No." Victor seemed surprised. Daniel continued, "There was a time when I wanted you to feel what I felt. I wanted you embarrassed. Afraid. Helpless. But that kind of anger is heavy. I had a daughter to raise. A company to build. People depending on me. I could not carry you forever." Victor looked down. "I was wrong about you." Daniel said nothing. Victor's voice lowered. "I was cruel." "Yes," Daniel said. "You were." The honesty landed harder than anger. Victor nodded slowly. Daniel placed a folder on the desk. "We are buying the plant," he said. "But not to destroy it. We are keeping as many workers as possible. We are modernizing production. We are turning this place into a training and manufacturing center." Victor stared at the folder. "And me?" Daniel paused. "You will not run it." Victor gave a bitter smile. "Of course. But," Daniel said, "if you truly want to repair some of the damage, you can help with transition records. Vendor history. Equipment files. Worker contracts. No title. No authority. Just service." Victor looked at him in disbelief. "Why would you offer me anything?" Daniel thought of Lily. Of Mike. Of every worker who had once been told they were worthless. "Because someone has to stop the cycle," he said. The sale went through 3 months later. News cameras gathered outside the plant when Carter Rebuild Works officially took ownership. Reporters asked Daniel what it felt like to buy the company that had fired him. Daniel stood at the podium wearing a simple navy jacket. Lily stood in the front row, now a teenager, tears shining in her eyes. Mike, Carla, Jamal, Mrs. Bennett, Grace, and hundreds of workers stood behind her. Daniel looked at the old Hale Manufacturing sign being lowered from the building. Then he looked at the new sign being raised. Carter Industrial Works. He took a breath. "Years ago," Daniel said into the microphone, "I walked out of this building carrying a cardboard box. I had no job, no savings, and no idea how I would take care of my daughter. I was told I was finished. I was told I only knew how to fix junk." He paused as the crowd grew silent. But sometimes the world calls something junk because it does not have the patience to see what it can become. Machines. Buildings. People. Dreams. Families. Sometimes all they need is someone willing to believe, rebuild, and refuse to quit. Lily wiped her tears. Daniel continued, "This plant will not be a place where people are thrown away. It will be a place where people are trained, respected, and given another chance. We are not just opening a factory today. We are opening a door." The crowd erupted. Months turned into years. Carter Industrial Works became one of the most respected manufacturing companies in the country. It did not grow because Daniel chased attention. It grew because customers trusted him. Workers trusted him. Communities trusted him. The company bought abandoned factories in struggling towns and reopened them. It built training centers beside production floors. It created childcare support for single parents, because Daniel never forgot what it felt like to choose between a sick child and a paycheck. One afternoon, Daniel walked through the original garage where everything had started. He had kept it untouched behind the new headquarters. The roof was repaired now, but the oil stains remained. Lily, now in college studying engineering, walked beside him. "Why do you keep this place?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "So I never forget." She touched the old purple logo still painted on a wooden board. "You know," she said, "it was a terrible logo." Daniel laughed. "It was perfect." Lily looked at him. "Did you ever think it would become this?" Daniel looked around the small garage, remembering the cold nights, the broken machines, the fear, the sandwich she had shared with him on the floor. "No," he said. "At first, I just wanted to survive. And then? Then I realized survival was not enough. If I was going to rebuild my life, I wanted to help other people rebuild theirs too." That evening, Daniel received an invitation to speak at a national business conference. The topic was leadership, resilience, and rebuilding American manufacturing. He almost declined. He still felt more comfortable on a factory floor than a stage. But Lily convinced him. "You need to tell them," she said. "Tell them what?" "That people like us are not finished just because someone powerful says so." At the conference, Daniel stood in front of thousands of executives, investors, founders, and students. On the giant screen behind him appeared two images. The first was the old auction yard lot full of rusted machines. The second was Carter Industrial Works, shining with lights, workers, and production lines. Daniel began quietly. "I did not build an empire because I wanted revenge. Revenge is too small. I built it because my daughter needed dinner. Because my friend believed in me. Because one customer gave me a chance. Because broken things still have value when the right hands touch them." The room was silent. He continued, "The greatest mistake leaders make is thinking value only comes polished, perfect, and easy. But some of the strongest people in the world are the ones carrying scars. Some of the best workers are the ones nobody else hired. Some of the best ideas are sitting in notebooks because someone laughed at them." He paused. "I was fired. Humiliated. Told I was finished. But losing that job did not end my life. It pushed me toward the life I was supposed to build." When Daniel finished, the crowd stood. Not because he was rich. Not because he had one. But because every person in that room understood what it meant to be underestimated. Years later, Victor Hale visited the plant one last time. He had moved away after the transition, living quietly, far from the world where he had once commanded fear. Daniel met him in the lobby. Victor looked around at the workers, the training center, the wall of graduate photos, and the busy factory beyond the glass. "You turned it into something better than my family ever did," Victor said. Daniel did not answer immediately. Then he said, "Your father built a company. You inherited walls. We built a purpose." Victor nodded, accepting the truth. Before leaving, he handed Daniel a small envelope. Inside was the old termination paper Daniel had signed years earlier. Victor had found a copy in archived files. Daniel looked at it for a long moment. "You can throw it away," Victor said. Daniel folded it and put it back in the envelope. "No," he said. "I will keep it." Victor looked confused. Daniel smiled gently. "Not because it hurt me. Because it reminds me that one page can end a job, but it cannot end a man." After Victor left, Daniel walked to the factory floor. Machines hummed with steady power. Workers moved with purpose. A group of trainees gathered around Jamal as he explained a control panel. Carla shouted instructions over the noise. Mike, older now, sat near a workbench teaching a young mechanic how to listen to an engine. Daniel stood there quietly, heart full. He had once believed success meant proving Victor wrong. Now he understood success meant proving hope right. That night, Daniel returned home and found Lily waiting with 2 cups of tea. She had become more like her mother in ways that still surprised him. The same warmth. The same stubborn kindness. The same ability to see through his silence. You are thinking about the past again, she said. Daniel smiled. Maybe. Does it still hurt? He considered the question. A little, he admitted. But not the same way. How does it feel now? Daniel looked out the window at the lights of the city. Like a scar, he said. It reminds me something tried to break me, but did not. Lily rested her head on his shoulder. For a while, they sat without speaking. And Daniel understood that the empire was not the buildings, the machines, the contracts, or the money. The empire was this. A daughter who had seen him fall and rise. Workers who found dignity again. Families who had food on the table. People who walked through his doors believing they still had a future. The next morning, Daniel visited a new training class. 24 people sat in front of him. Some were nervous. Some tired. Some embarrassed to be starting over so late in life. Daniel saw himself in all of them. He held up an old machine part, rusted and rough. What do you see? He asked. A young man in the front said, scrap. Daniel smiled. That is what most people see. He turned it in his hand. But someone who understands machines sees material. History. Strength. Possibility. This piece is not useless because it is old. It is useless only if nobody is willing to rebuild it. He placed it on the table. Some of you have been told you are too late. Too broken. Too poor. Too ordinary. Some of you have been fired, rejected, ignored, or laughed at. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me the day I walked out with a cardboard box. The room became still. You are not finished. A woman in the second row began to cry silently. Daniel's voice softened. You may be tired. You may be scared. You may have lost things you cannot get back. But as long as you are breathing, there is something left to build. Start small. Start scared. Start with what nobody else wants. Just start. Outside, the factory machines came alive for the morning shift. The sound filled the building like thunder. Daniel looked at the trainees and smiled. Now, he said, let us rebuild. And that is the truth about life. Sometimes the door that closes in your face is not the end of your story. Sometimes it is the only way God, destiny, or life itself can push you toward the door you were meant to open. Daniel Carter was fired, mocked, and told he was finished. But he bought what nobody wanted, believed in people nobody trusted, and built an empire from the pieces others threw away. So if you are watching this today and you feel rejected, forgotten, or broken, remember Daniel's story. The world may laugh at your beginning because it cannot see your ending. But keep going. Keep building. Keep believing. One day, the same people who said you were finished may stand in front of what you built and realize they were looking at greatness before it had a chance to rise. And before you go, if this story touched your heart, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that their story is not over. Because sometimes, the person everyone underestimates becomes the one who changes everything.